We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. This isn't a regular Rational Boomer podcast. This is an extra Rational Boomer podcast. Currently, you're listening to Abe on the show, and we had a great talk. It's a great podcast. If you haven't listened to it, by all means, do that. Tomorrow, we're going to have Christy on. Now, this is an interesting program. She has a great perspective. At the time we recorded that podcast, we hadn't heard who the official pick by Kamala Harris was for VP nominee. Both of us felt like it was going to be Walz. So this was done ahead of time, and we took our thought process and thought Walz was going to be it. And surprise, we look like fucking geniuses because we were right. So this extra podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about um, Tim Walz, Minnesota governor, being picked as the VP nominee for Kamala Harris. And I've got a ton of emails to get to, too. So we're going to do that all in one felled swoop. But as you know, we've been waiting a long time to find out who Kamala Harris was going to pick as her VP nominee. Tim Walz wasn't even in the mix up front. You know, Shapiro from Pennsylvania seemed like a likely choice. Um, Mark Kelly from Arizona seemed like a likely choice. Andy Bashir from Kentucky. You know, Abe thought Andy Bashir was a shoe-in, and I could see how that would have been a possibility. He's young, he's well-spoken, he's a Democrat in a Republican state. It all kind of fit together. But as time went on, it seemed more and more that they were leaning to Tim Walz. And as of this morning, this Tuesday morning, we find out that's who she picked. And I think it's an absolute great pick. Here's what I think about Kamala Harris. She is the Democratic presidential nominee. I think she is the right person at the right place in the right time. And here's why. From the beginning, I've said the Republicans' bottom line here is they're mounting a war against women, people of color, LGBTQ folks, and children. And all you have to do is look at Project 2025 to see that that's exactly what they're doing. It seems fitting that a woman of color for the first time to run for the presidency of the United States and also lead the charge against this war. Thankfully, she's smart, she's strong, she's articulate, she's also very substantive. She's going to win in November, and she is the exact right person to fight against what the Republicans are trying to do to this country and all of us. So then you bring in her nominee as Tim Walz, a governor from Minnesota. Now, a lot of people thought they should have gone with, or she should have gone with Shapiro from Pennsylvania to help her win Pennsylvania. But Tim Walz was a good choice. He was a good partner in this upcoming campaign and ultimately in the presidency. You see, Tim Walz comes from Minnesota, and Minnesota is almost assuredly going to vote for Kamala Harris. That's not going to be a problem. He's not going to have to swing that state for her. But there's a lot in common with Kamala Harris. And it's about how they work together and can somebody take over if something should happen, God forbid, with Kamala Harris. And Tim Walz is that guy. And I've said about Tim Walz, too, that he, too, is the right man at the right place at the right time. Because given that we're talking about this war against women, people of color, LGBTQ, and children, he, too, is the perfect one to fight back with Kamala. A lot of things people don't know about Tim Walz is that while a lot of red states were banning abortions in their states or 6 weeks limitations, he codified Roe v. Wade in the state of Minnesota. He protected abortion rights for the people of Minnesota. Unashamedly, he did that. Later on, it's kind of a parallel with Joe Biden because Governor Walz was the first governor to appoint a black woman to the state Supreme Court. That's what Governor Walz did. And here is the absolute kicker of the thing. Now that he's leaving his job as governor of the state of Minnesota after getting a ton done, the lieutenant governor will take over his job as governor, who also happens to be a woman, an indigenous woman, no less, a Native American. And this will be the first time we've ever had a Native American as governor of any state in this country, which is absolutely fucking embarrassing. Tim Walz is an advocate for women, people of color, LGBTQ, children. He's very accomplished as the governor of Minnesota. In fact, I've said he kind of parallels Joe Biden. Joe Biden was able to get so much done in his 4 years, in spite of the fact he didn't have but a slim margin in the Senate and no margin in the House, but still he was able to accomplish it. And the same goes for Tim Walz. What he accomplished in the state of Minnesota is truly amazing. He had a slim majority in the legislature. And some of the things he got was free lunch for kids, students. As I said, he codified abortion rights. He expanded background checks on guns. And he legalized marijuana in Minnesota, among a bunch of other things. He's done some impressive things with very little to work with, much like Joe Biden. It's almost like Tim Walz is a younger Joe Biden, which isn't a bad thing, and maybe why Kamala picked him. I think they complement one another too, because they're both very tough, but they're also very likable, which is a hard combination to come up with. You know, they can kick a Republican's ass, but you still want to hug them. Both of them. They're both like that. Now, what's interesting, the Republicans are going to come after Tim Walz. They're going to say, well, he messed up during COVID. Now, what you have to understand, there are people in this state that called Tim Walz a tyrant, because when COVID came around, he shut things down quick, fast, in a hurry. He had the mask mandates. He was very tough on what was going on with COVID, and the Republicans didn't like it, of course. But the end result was this: Minnesota recovered quicker, and there were fewer people that died in Minnesota because of what Tim Walz did. And beyond that, Tim Walz would have never had to do any of these things if the Republican president, Donald Trump, had just done his job instead of saying it's a fucking hoax. It'll go away when it warms up. Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the mask. If Donald Trump had done what he was supposed to do, Tim Walz would have never had to do anything like this. So to blame Tim Walz is a little short-sighted. The other thing that they will come at him with is the George Floyd thing. Now, the Republicans would have you believe when George Floyd happened and we had the riots that they burned the city, never to be returned to normality. And that's not true. Minneapolis isn't burned to the ground. You can walk around everywhere. It's fine. But what was going on at that time was pretty serious. And Tim Walz is getting heat for something that's really not his fault. First of all, let's understand what we had. We had a police department in Minneapolis that had a lot of problems with their behavior toward people of color. They had a long history of this. And then it comes along, a Minneapolis police officer murders a black man in the streets of Minnesota. It is video recorded and spread worldwide. And still these fucks will say, well, he wasn't a good guy. So what if he wasn't a good guy? The police don't have the option to prosecute and execute on the streets, regardless of who it is. Cuff them, take them down to the courthouse, and indict them or charge them with something. But that's not what happened. This man killed this black man in the streets. Now, I will tell you one other thing, too. There was a chance that this police officer could have gotten away with this had it gone through the regular Minneapolis courts. It could have, all the things and all the freedoms that police and the corruption in local judicial systems, he could have gotten off, and that would have been tragic. But what happened is Governor Walz went to the Attorney General, Ellingson, and said, you're going to prosecute this from the state level. And that is why Derek Chauvin is currently in jail and will be there for the rest of his fucking life. Now, shortly after that, of course, there were a bunch of riots. And at first they were nonviolent, but eventually they became violent. And what Republicans don't tell you, and I know for a fact because I've seen the video, that while it was fairly normal protests, not riots yet, there were some instigators, some conservative, Republican, Trump-la-fuck instigators that would come in and break windows. And when you've got a mob mentality, the mob rule takes over and then all hell breaks loose. Now, what they will say is that Governor Walz let the city burn. There's even a movie out, probably similar to 200 Mules or whatever the fuck they called that. It's all bullshit. It's all phony, but they make it look like Walz let the city burn down. And a lot of Trump fucks believe that. But what you have to understand about this is the governor has so much jurisdiction. When something like this happens in the city of Minneapolis, it's the mayor that makes these decisions. And if the governor is to step in, the mayor has to ask for it. And I know the governor went to the mayor and said, listen, man, do you need our help? And he said, no, for a while. Eventually, it was taken care of. The National Guard came in. But to blame Tim Walz for that is a little ridiculous and pretty typical of Republicans. They take little things, they exaggerate it, they just lie about things. So I think Tim Walz is going to be a great vice presidential candidate. He's very strong. He's down home. He's down to earth. He's tough, but he's likable, just like Kamala Harris. This is going to be an interesting campaign. This is going to be very good. And I know Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are going to try to talk shit about Tim Walz, but they need to be careful. Tim looks like a big teddy bear, but he will fuck you up. He will fuck you up if he thinks you're trying to hurt people and overturn democracy. So I'm looking forward to this. I think Kamala made the right choice, the best choice at the right time. I think Tim Walz is on board. We start going crazy from here until November, and we win this motherfucking thing. All right. So let's move on to some of the emails. Now, you have to understand these emails may have come at certain times, maybe before this decision, so you have to take that into account. First one says from Dave, he says, Mike, you and Arlene are onto something. Not surprised you swooped in and got here on the show. She is your Robin on the Howard Stern show. I don't know about that. I don't know if she'd like that characterization. Real good flow between you two. Look forward to her weekly spotlight, Dave. Now you're jumping the gun here. I would have no problem with having her on weekly, but she's got other shit to do. She runs a company. She does her own TikToks. She can come on anytime she wants. Anytime she just sends me a note and says, Mike, I'd like to come on. I'll fit it in where I can. I'll be honest with you. It's been getting a little crazy here with guests on the air. Now, understand, I love that. The more guests, the better. But to get her on a weekly thing, if it could be done, I'd do it. If she wanted to do it, I would do it. But we haven't talked about anything like that. We just did the first one, and I'm anxious for her to come back. And whenever she wants to come back, she is welcome. All right, the next one comes from Denise. She says, Rod Stewart shares post mocking Trump. And I saw this. He was basically mocking what Donald Trump said about Kamala Harris, about turning black. He had this sign behind him on stage. He became an orange person. British singer-songwriter Rod Stewart poked fun at former president for questioning vice president's race and ethnicity, saying he never knew Trump was orange until the GOP presidential nominee suddenly became an orange person. Thank you, Rod Stewart. That's a good point. And thank you, Denise. All right, the next one comes from Roscoe from PTC. I don't know what that means, but probably should. GM Boomer, you have been killing it with guests of late, especially love Arlene Unfiltered. She did a great job providing salient facts that really resonate. Keep up the good work and check out this clip from Mother Jones, which I haven't yet and I will. Have a fantastic week. Roscoe from PTC. P.S. Looks like Kamala will choose Walz. Solid choice for VP. Let's win this thing for the sake of our country. Couldn't agree more. And you were right, as I was right, and as Christy was right. Because as I say, tomorrow there'll be another podcast with Christy and I. And you've heard her on the show before. She's fantastic. She's very smart. And at the time we recorded it, we didn't know who the official nominee was, but both of us felt like it was going to be Walz. So it's a good conversation, and we get off into different areas as well. Next one comes from Sandra. Abe is so great, Sandra, New Mexico. I agree with you. It's short, succinct. Abe does a great job. He's a smart guy. He's entertaining as hell. He and I don't always see eye to eye, but I love Abe, and I'm always willing to listen to what he says because he is a smart man. And he's a compassionate man, too, and he cares about people. And I think that's just as important as knowing a bunch of shit. All right, the next one comes from Tanya from Cleveland. Mike, I realize you may not be responsible for ads that run during your podcast, but there's one Spotify that's slamming the EPA and electric cars. It's sponsored by the American Petroleum Institute. Again, I'm certain this isn't a choice you made, but it seems to run counter to your views, and I just wanted you to be aware of it. Thanks for being on the right side of history, Tanya from Cleveland. P.S. Go Harris Walz. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what ads they put in there. And I guess I'm not surprised that they would put counter ads to what my mindset would be. And I apologize for that. They do put ads in. I don't have any control over it. Um, just don't listen to the fucking ads. Don't respond to the ads. You know, the whole point is to get attention. When people put up ads, when they put up bullshit like that, just don't pay attention to it. I don't know that I can stop it. I certainly can't control what kind of ads go in there. But this would be akin to, the Democrats putting something on Fox News about Kamala Harris. That shit's going to happen during an election year. Once we get past the election year, that's probably not going to be a thing. All right, next one comes from Eddie. He says, Hi, Mike. With the recent outpouring of support for Kamala Harris, do you think there could be a landslide victory for her, similar to the one that Richard Nixon had in the 1972 election? Thank you, Eddie. I may be the only one saying this, but yeah, I do think it could and may very well be a landslide. I mean, you got to look at how popular Kamala Harris is. She's even getting Republicans on her side right now with Republicans for Harris. Then you throw in the fact of what I've said before. This election wasn't so much about the popularity of one opponent over the other. It was about how much people hate Donald Trump and are terrified of Donald Trump. That hasn't changed. They're just as hateful and just as terrified of Donald Trump. And then you throw into the mix that Kamala is immensely popular. Yeah, I think it could be a landslide. Now, people will say, You're crazy. Look at the polls. Fuck the polls. Look at the facts. And the facts tell us it could be a landslide, and I hope it is, because that would give a mandate to the Republicans and Donald Trump that says, We don't like you, motherfuckers. And hopefully they'll understand at that point. All right, the next one comes from Lisa from New Hampshire. Hi, Mike. I have some concerns because, well, Trump's erratic behavior has ramped up since VP Kamala Harris has become the nominee for president. He's visually more unhinged in his interviews and campaign rallies. I'm concerned that there are several officials in swing states that are not going to certify the election results when VP Harris wins by a landslide. Something has to be up, or they wouldn't be so comfortable saying the quiet parts out loud now. I mean, yeah, he's always said the quiet parts, but he's not hiding his bigotry at all now. Not even a little. And he's arrogantly stated at the white nationalist evangelical church that people will never have to vote again when he wins. I'm curious to know what coup they've already planned and how they're going to try to steal the election this time. And if the corrupt Supreme Court justices will get the appeals for it and be a deciding factor. Because, well, we've seen how they can swing. I don't know how that works. Your thoughts, Lisa from New Hampshire. Well, I talked a little bit about that with Arlene, and Arlene knows way fucking more than I do. But I think people are way too worried about that. Anything that they might do in 2024 is something they already did in 2020. So we're all aware of what the possibilities are. You got to remember in 2020, Donald Trump was the president. He was in power, but that's not the case anymore. Joe Biden is the president. He's in power. Kamala Harris is going to certify the election, oddly enough, probably for herself. Um, are they going to cheat? Fuck yeah, they're going to cheat. That's just what they do. Are they going to be successful? Well, they weren't successful when they had everything on their side. Now they have nothing on their side. All these people that claim they're not going to certify the election, it'll just go about the process like it did back in 2020. It'll go to court, it'll lose on appeal, or it won't be heard, and they will certify. They legally have to certify. Motherfuckers could go to jail. Let's see how strong they are and how tough they want to hold it. Especially if it is a landslide, they'll see the writing on the wall. They'll see that they can't win this one. And if they continue to push it, they're going to go to fucking jail. And Kamala will make sure of it. All right, the next one comes from Tina. Hi, Boomer. Just a quick note to say I appreciate how you're on top of the fear mongering. I usually like Rachel Maddow, but confess that I took the bait on her recent piece that insinuated that the GOP was preparing to steal our election. Keep calling out the BS. We need to be reminded, Tina. Well, thank you, Tina. And that's what you have to understand is if you're watching mainstream news, you can't count on it being accurate or complete. You can't count on the fact that it's not going to be slanted because it is. They have everything to gain by making you frightened because you're going to continue coming back to their outlet to watch what they have to offer, and they want viewers and money. That's what they want. Every time I turn around, I'm hearing that, oh my God, the world's falling apart, the sky is falling. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, we had the stock market drop by 1,000 points. Oh my God, that's the end of the world. The recession's coming. Remember how they told us the recession was coming as soon as Joe Biden took office, and it never did. In fact, we had an economy that was absolutely fucking rolling. Well, we got this 1,000 point drop, and that sounds like a lot, but not when you consider it this way. When Donald Trump left office, the Dow Jones was at 30,000 points. Just before the drop of this 1,000 points, it was up around 40,000. Joe Biden increased the Dow by 10,000 in less than 4 years, and it dropped by 1,000. That represents maybe 2% of the entire deal. So it's not a huge drop. It's not 1929 again. And the fact of the matter is, the reason why it dropped is so ridiculous. And some people argue with me about this, but I've heard a number of financial experts state this. This may not be the only reason, but this is the major reason. And the reasoning is this: when the jobs report from July came out, it was expected they'd be 180,000 jobs, but instead it was 114,000. So it came up short. They were disappointed by 66,000 jobs. So that's where they go, oh my God, the world's going to shit. Here we go. It's trouble now. It's going to happen. But what they fail to remember is that over and above those 66,000 jobs that didn't happen when they expected, behind that, over the past 4 years, Joe Biden's created 17 million motherfucking jobs. You didn't have an orgasm and tell me the world is going to heaven when that happened, and 66,000 jobs, now you're telling me the world is going to fall apart. Keep in mind, when Donald Trump was in office and he left office, he lost 2.5 million jobs, only one of two presidents in history to fucking do that. So now what's happening today? I don't know a lot about the stock market, but I got a text from my brother and he said everything's back up 500 points. So we're halfway to where we were before this alleged crash happened. It's going to level out. And what it's also going to do is encourage the Fed to come out with a lower interest rate, which will be good for the country and good for the economy. Everybody wants to turn this into drama, and I'm fucking tired of it. This election season is so much a problem. They hype up every news story that comes out. People aren't hiring people right now in the tech industry because they're waiting till after the election. Well, you know how the election's going to happen. Eventually, you're going to have to hire people. So why are you going to wait until November? But that's what they'll fucking do. Every wealthy person in this country tries to game the system as much as they can so their guy wins. And when they don't win, they go, okay, fuck it, we'll just go back to normal. But for a period of time, maybe a year leading up to the election, they shut everything down, hoping to undermine the Democrats. It's fucking ridiculous. And it's a waste of time and money. All right. Next one says, "Hi, Mike, longtime listener, first time contact. Yeah, I know. I hitchhike on another show. I believe that I have coined a phrase as I have surprisingly not heard it. Not a chance with Shady Vance." I like that. Not a chance with Shady Vance. I like it. It's accurate. It rhymes. It's concise. Fuck yeah, I'll take that. I also would like your input on if Kamala gets elected president, which I wholeheartedly believe. Will every single one of the members of Congress, the traitors to our country that participated in the insurrection on January 6th, be brought to justice and further disgraced and prosecuted? I do think that. I think that's what Jack Smith is waiting for in terms of the superseding indictments to the members of Congress. They most certainly were part of the insurrection. They played a part in the planning and the facilitating of that. I expect that they will. And I guarantee you they won't get any pushback from Kamala. Goes on to say, "I've listened to your podcast as well as all Midas Touch podcast. I really don't know why you don't have 100 million subscribers. Trump, 21st century Hitler, and MAGA Nazi party. I think that I coined that phrase too. Have to, got to go. What the fuck is wrong with people? The history books are going to be very unkind to morons." Um, what will you say when their grandchildren ask them 10 years from now, what the fuck were you thinking? You were in a cult. Thanks for your time, Mike. Keep up the great work. Andy O. from Iowa. Please use my name as often as you like. I only conceal my last name for employment reasons. No problem. Andy O. from Iowa. And you make some good points. And why don't I have 100 million followers? I don't know. TikTok, I have 366,000 followers, and that's way more than I could ever fucking possibly imagine or probably deserve. Got to be honest with you, Andy, it's not about the number of followers. It's about finding those people, a good audience that want to hear what they want to hear, and that hopefully I can pass a message along and they can pass it a message along. I'm not doing this for followers or money. I'm doing this because we're in a tight situation in this upcoming election, and we need to do all we can to beat these motherfuckers. And I'll be honest with you, we've been doing this a long time, and I personally think we're doing a fucking good job. I don't know how much impact we're making, but we're having some, and that's important. All right, this next one comes from Garage Door Jeff. "Hi, Boomer. I'm not sure if it's by intent or dumb luck, but your guests often seem particularly timely. Today, it was great to hear Andy represent the younger people's reaction to Kamala replacing Joe. So encouraging. When Andy said he has a 9-year-old brother, I lost it because while he's speaking, my ears are hearing a 50-year-old guy in terms of maturity and demeanor. I'm thinking about Old Soul's theory, re the JD pick, and I'm applying that principle that we still underestimate this orange fuck. I think it's on target plus some. It would be completely feasible that the plan had been for Trump to resign immediately after inauguration, be pardoned by JD, and then go off to golf. That's conceivable. Or that he just keels over and dies and JD takes over. Then JD appoints a lunatic VP approved by Mike Johnson, or Mike Johnson himself for that matter, in Congress, and they're off and running. It will be interesting to me to see if they stick with Vance because he's clearly killing them. And that's before allegations come out that he's gay, which I fully expect are coming. It's funny about JD Vance. Everybody's going, ew, he's a liability. He's going to sink this election for Donald Trump. Yeah, maybe. But isn't Donald Trump a bigger liability with 34 felony convictions, found liable for sexual assault, stealing classified documents? I think whether it was J.D. Vance or the Pope, Donald Trump has sunk his own election, and it doesn't matter who he has as VP. He ends it up by saying, "Best Garage Door Jeff. P.S. If Trump does dump Vance, and assuming Nikki has enough sense to not torch any career she has left, I think I have to pick he'd go with Elise Stefanik." Yeah, that's probably right. She's sufficiently toxic and plenty desperate. I mean, if it was 3 a.m. and the bartender yelled out last call and the lights were coming on, she's who I'd go for. I don't know. Toxic women of a Republican bent. I don't see the attraction. I mean, no matter how drunk you are. But to each his own, Jeff. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Talked about Tim Walz being named VP nominee for Kamala Harris. That was a great pick. I think we're in good shape there with Kamala and her ultimate win in November. But we have a lot of emails, and that's what we're tending to right now. What is your opinion on certification of votes? The Republicans say they will refuse to certify. Trump feels he'll win this way. Suzanne, the old lady from North Carolina. Yeah, I think that, as I was talking about before, I think people are making a lot of hay about this. This is something we dealt with in 2020. They failed. We all know what's coming now, so we can prepare for it. And Joe Biden's the president, not Donald Trump. So I'm not real worried about it. Are they going to try? Sure, they're going to fucking try because they're feckless motherfuckers. But I'm not worried about it. I think the win is going to be so big it won't even matter anyway. All right, next one comes from Jason. He says, I recommend watching Frontline PBS episode The Enemy Within about the rise of far right and Nazism in Germany right now. So many parallels to what happened under Trump's America. Jason. Well, I think Frontline's always a good show to watch. I used to watch it all the time back in the day. I haven't recently, but I would suggest that's probably good advice, Jason. And we got to know about history and we got to know what other countries are doing so we can protect our own. Next one comes from Grandma Patty. She says, Hi, Mike. Just learned this morning that once we are closer than 89 days from the election, states cannot change your voting status, as in purge you for no good reason. We are at 96 days right now. We all need to keep track of those days and check our voter status on days 90 and 89. Red states are planning to purge as many people as possible, way more than they did last election, and probably at the last possible moment. Boomer Brigade, don't get caught off guard. This is hopefully an easy fix for anyone caught in one of the purges. Speaking of registering to vote, I heard another story I sure hope is true. Some Swifties researched the registration rules in all the states that Taylor Swift is doing a concert in between now and the election. They will have forms and or QR codes so young people can register to vote right there at the concert. I heard about this from the 15-year-old daughter of a friend, so I hope it's more than a rumor. As I thought about it, I realized that at a concert like that may be the safest place for some of these young people to accomplish that. Grandma Patty. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. It's conceivable. I mean, we know Taylor Swift is all about registering. She did that a while back, and a lot of people came out and register. A lot of young people. I don't know if it's true. I'll check around see if I can find out. But Taylor hasn't called lately. I can't get her on the phone. She's gotten kind of snooty since she's become a billionaire. I'm kidding. I love Taylor Swift. Not even a big fan of her music, but I have a lot of respect for her integrity. All right. Next email says, Hey, Mike, Joe here. It's been a while since I've written you, and I have been on a high ever since Joe stepped down and Kamala has taken the reins. I was on the White Guys for Kamala call and love seeing all the support she's getting. My concern comes from watching Rachel Maddow. She brought up the fact that MAGA is planning not to certify smaller state county elections and having this be the way that Trump gets in. She said there are 70 electors poised to not certify the votes across the 50 or 60 swings or 5 or 6 swing states if they aren't in the GOP favor. Should this be a concern or is this a moot point? You've always been my barometer on situations like this, and I'm wondering what you think about this. Regards, Joe. As I was saying earlier, is it of concern? Sure, it's of concern. Anytime somebody tries to cheat or pull the wool over our eyes, we should be concerned by that. But I'm not really worried about it for the reasons I said before. This is all stuff we've seen before. People have prepared for this, they're planning to see it come. Donald Trump is not in office, so he doesn't have the power he once did. Joe does. And remember, Joe has immunity. If something really fucked up happens, Joe can do whatever the fuck he wants because he has immunity. And that's probably why they wanted him to step down. They knew he was a wild card. If he wasn't running for the presidency and just doing his job as president and having this immunity, he can pretty much do whatever the fuck he wants to Republicans. And people will say, well, he wouldn't do something crazy. That's just not Joe Biden. And that's true. However, if something horrific happens coming up to the election or the certification, Joe might feel stronger about the country than whether or not it's the right or wrong thing or politically correct thing to do. Joe's here to help this country. He's saved this country from Donald Trump, and he's not going to let him take it back before he fucking leaves. All right. Next one says, Dear Mike, why is the Pope not denouncing Trump on his blasphemy with Jesus on his shoulders, our Constitution and the Bible, all his consistent lying, cheating, etc., or his multiple marriages and divorces and multiple mistresses, or being twice impeached, adjudicated rapist, 34 felony convictions with more to come, his constant racism and bigotry, and all the rest of his baggage. The Pope is really not spewing his love and vows to Christianity. He should be screaming from the rooftops just exactly who Donald Trump is and everything about him. That is, he is not a savior, not the second coming, not sent by God. Well, I think it has a lot to do with politics. You know, the Pope will say things from time to time. He doesn't have any authority over the governments. He could say what he wants to. You would hope the people that follow the Pope, the Catholics, understand exactly what you just said. You would hope that to be the case. Probably not the case. I don't know. I don't know that we put that on the Pope. I'd just soon the Pope stay as far away from politics as possible. Religion and politics is one of our biggest problems. So just, do your thing and we'll get this political thing fixed on our own. Now, the email continues on. Same with corporate media. Why are they not giving the news? My opinion has been immediately since the minute of the assassination attempt is Trump popped a fake blood pack on his ear, claimed bogus Trump BS, put a big stupid pillow on his ear for sympathy, and now 100% miraculously healed, grifted millions from unsuspecting cult members. He's selling idiotic sneakers again and hawking the other MAGA shit. That is presidential. How is this freaking moron even allowed to be in the race? What the fuck is wrong with our Supreme Court? They are right-wing extremists. The Republican Party, now MAGA Nazis, and under the spell of Adolf Sodom Trump, the Hitler of the 21st century. What the fuck is wrong with people? How can this puppet have so much support, Andy? Well, I think you said it. I think it's the media. When Donald Trump first came about, he was obviously a raging fool, but that was good TV, and they made money from getting more viewers to watch it. So they didn't want to kill the golden goose, so they just encouraged it. And when they encouraged it, they gave him legitimacy, and that's how he became president. A lot of questions need to be answered as to why Donald Trump has been allowed to do what Donald Trump has done. And I'm going to tell you this. After the election, Kamala Harris is the president. Those questions will be asked, and these motherfuckers are going to have a hard time answering to those questions. All right, the next one comes from Rhonda. Hi, Boomer. Every time I listen to your podcast when Ed is the guest, I feel like I'm sitting in a master class of American history, economics, political science, and sociology. It's a great pleasure to listen to him and your discussion. I wish more people would think about the history of this nation and what we've gone through and what is at stake in this moment. The majority of us know it's just a few that don't want to be bothered, but then also want to cast their vote without full knowledge. I can't wait to see Kamala as Madam President. Positivity and hope we can do great things. Thanks again, Rhonda. Yeah, I agree with you. Having Ed on the show is a great luxury. As I've said, I worked with him for many years, so he and I worked together very well. But there are so many other smart people that come on this show. We've got Arlene, we've got Christy, who's coming up tomorrow, Abe, Eric, Jace, our old soul. That's the fun thing about doing the show when I have guests. I'm always learning something every damn time. I become smarter by listening to these guests who come on the show, and I'm thankful for that. Denise had this short one. Jimmy Carter says he hopes he will live long enough to vote for Kamala Harris, and that sounds like Jimmy Carter. Dyed in the wool Democrat, a great man in his own right. He is in his last days, as acknowledged by his grandson, I believe. And all he's saying now is, I just want to stay alive long enough to vote for Kamala. Diehard Democrat, a president for the people to the very end. So God bless you, Jimmy Carter. And we thank you for all you've done for this country. You didn't get enough credit when you were president, but you've done so much to bringing this country together and helping people in need. I can't respect a president any more than Jimmy Carter. All right, the next one comes from Donna. Mike, I wanted to share this info with you because I heard you're addressing this subject on Trump trying to steal the election. The American Bar Association is forming a group to protect democracy. I heard this information on YouTube, a podcast called Defiant Lawyers. He said Judge Ludig is a part of the coalition. He said at the end of the podcast, the cavalry is coming. Thought you might want to check out and share with your listeners if I'm correct. By the way, I've been enjoying your show, Donna. Judge Ludig is one of the preeminent constitutional judges. You see him on TV news all the time. And that doesn't surprise me. A bunch of lawyers getting together, getting ready and prepared for any bullshit they try to pull, and they're going to fight against them. And they're going to do it pro bono. So this is what I mean. It's real easy to say, oh, they're going to flip the election like they tried in 2020. But there's a lot of people laying in wait for them, and it's going to be extremely difficult for them to try to pull anything off. Plus, they're fucking stupid. So you got that working against them. All right. Next up. Hi, I'm a fan of the Rational Boomer podcast and especially look forward to the Thursday sessions with Old Soul. I would like to present a topic for potential discussion with regard to Trump's January 6th speech and legal precedent. I'm not a lawyer and I have no legal expertise, so this is a question worth considering. Everyone knows that Trump's social media posted and his speech preceding the January 6th riot. If this case goes to trial, it seems like precedent from a case from my case should be used to judge Trump's behavior. All right. Massachusetts case, the Commonwealth versus Michelle Carter. Could this court case as precedent for handling the judgment regarding Trump's own behavior on the events that led to the events of January 6, 2021? This was a famous case whereby Miss Carter was found guilty of manslaughter for contributing to her boyfriend's suicide through her text, etc. One would think Trump's behavior with resulting outcomes is parallel to Miss Carter's contribution to her boyfriend's suicide. While Trump wasn't standing on the Capitol lawn during hurling a pitchfork through Nancy Pelosi's office window, his use of social media and speech does seem similar in behavior to Mrs. Carter's. Her actions were shown to have consequences, so a ruling by legal oversight could make the case that so should Trump's and other mouthpieces whom were a part of the process. Thank you for your insight if you might have an opinion on this. And she sent me some links, or he sent me some links. Regards, Rob Martin. Yeah, I think you make a good point. If you look back to January 6th, you saw all the insurrection just locked into the Twitter account of Donald Trump. If he would have said go home, they would have went home. If he would have said attack and shit on the floor, they would have, well, they did do that. So I don't know if he tweeted that. Now, I think you make a good point, and I can guarantee you that Jack Smith has considered that option. If that is a real option, you can bet that will come up in the case ultimately. All right. Next one says, hey, Boomer, bravo. Arlene was just fantastic. And you two and two of you working together was awesome. Thanks for having her on and keep up the good work, my friend. Don from Illinois. Couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm very fortunate. Every guest we have on, I have good luck with. I learn a lot. They make me look good. I'm all about having the guest on. That's what this is about. This Rational Boomer podcast isn't all about me. It's all about all of us that are rational boomers, whether we're of that age group or not. I guess you can say about the rational boomers, it's not so much Democrat or Republican. It's truth over lies, um, justice over injustice. If you're for that, you're a rational boomer. I don't care what your party is or what your religious affiliation is, your gender or your sexual identity is. It doesn't fucking matter. If you believe in what's true and what's right and what's fair and what's decent, then you're my kind of people. All right, the next one comes from Denise. Republicans for Harris launch features key names, impressive numbers. Given the state of the GOP, it's not easy for any Democratic candidate to pick up cross-party backing, but Kamala Harris is now backed by many Republicans. Yes, Republicans for Harris. That's becoming a thing. And as I've told you many times before, Donald Trump cannot win, absolutely cannot win without a unified party, the Republican Party. And he's already lost any number of people in the Republican Party. So it's just going to be impossible for him to win. All right, the next one says, "Hi, Mike. I happened to be in the car today and heard Trump fielding questions from black journalists at their annual conference. It seems like he was determined to say anything he could to piss off people of color, women, and especially black women. He had horrible things to say about Vice President Harris and said that she could never stand up to Putin or Z. They'd chew her up. And she's not really black. She just called herself black to get votes. He kept going on about the loss of black jobs because of the border stampede. I thought that he would have learned a lesson on the black jobs issue since it's burned him before. Later, I began to wonder if he set out to purposely piss off people of color just to bolster support in his white supremacist base. He's just stupid enough to do that. Lose what little black support he had in order to ensure that he gets votes of the racist crowd. That is already going to vote for him anyway. He is one dumb motherfucker. Thanks again for what you do, Scott, in Redneck County, Pennsylvania. Scott. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think he intentionally did what he did in the Black Journalist Convention or conference. Here's the thing with Donald Trump. There is no thought process. There's no strategy. There's no intelligence there. He got put in a position. These journalists asked him tough questions in the beginning, which he doesn't like to hear. He got angry, and then he just fucking spitballed the whole time. He thought, I'm going to say whatever I have to say because I'm angry, and because he thinks he's brilliant. He thinks everything he did was perfect. Little does he know, he pretty much sunk himself in that interview. All right, the next one comes from Mike. He says, "Hi, Mike. Just wanted to ask your opinion about Liz Cheney's pick for VP for Kamala. She could get votes from the anti-Trump Republicans and would double down on the female vote. Keep up the good work, Mike." Yeah, that was never going to happen. I know there's a lot of Democrats that love Liz Cheney because she hated Donald Trump and showed some integrity. That's well and good. But the fact of the matter is her political policies are very conservative. As a Democrat, you would never vote for her if you didn't know about what she did to Donald Trump and how she showed integrity. What Liz Cheney needs to do is wait till after the elections, try to pick up the pieces of the Republican Party and try to rehabilitate it and have her the lead of the political party, whatever they're going to call it, if it's still Republican. But the idea that she would be a vice presidential candidate, that was never going to happen. All right, next one says, "I have no doubt we're going to win both the popular and electoral vote in November. The Republican Party is prepared for that eventuality. It's why they're not as panicked as they should be." Oh, I think they're more panicked than you realized. They are recruiting and encouraging tens of thousands of MAGA volunteers to be poll watchers. They will all shout fraud in unison as soon as they lose. They will have no evidence, but that's not the point. And I say, so what? They did it after the 2020 election. Did Joe Biden get taken out of office and Donald Trump implanted back in? No, it didn't happen. And they're going to be weaker this time around. I'm not worried about them saying it's fake. Of course, they're going to say that. But after all this time and all the court cases, people are going to be laughing at them for the ridiculousness of their claims. This chorus of false alarms will combine with prepared lawsuits and demand for recounts. They will not win, but that's not the point either. All the above will be used as a false justification for the Republican Congress to refuse to certify election results. Well, that's well and good if you had a Republican Congress, but you won't have a Republican Congress because on January 3rd, all the members of the Senate and the House will be put in their place, and we will probably, most likely, almost certainly have a Democratic Congress. So that's the problem. Everybody thinks Mike Johnson's going to do this. Well, Mike Johnson isn't likely to even be the Speaker of the House. It's more likely to be Hakeem Jeffries. So you're looking for things to worry about. Just stop that. He goes on to say, it's the equivalent of lighting fires and creating smoke, a manufactured crisis to justify refusing to certify. Were they stopped did they stop the certification in 2020? No, and they're not going to this time. It's not going to happen. In fact, I think the beating's going to be so bad that they're just going to be so dejected they won't even fight back because the point wouldn't be there to do that. It would be pointless. Goes on to say Article 12, Section 3 of the Constitution will be invoked and the election will be decided by Congress with one vote per state, regardless of population. Republicans have the majority this way. Do they? As I just told you, on January 3rd, the new Congress comes in. It's likely to be Democrat, so that's not going to work. Keep up the good work, Mike. This fight isn't over after Trump has been beaten. I don't think it's going to be as dim as you think it is. Al, First Sergeant Al, U.S. Army returned. Love your comments, Al, but I think you're taking a negative side of this. You're making it sound like the Republicans have all the advantages on their side and the Democrats do not. That's just not the case. The Republicans are in deep trouble. They will not win the presidency in November, and they are going to lose the House and likely to continue to be on the minority in the Senate. All right, the next one said, what do you think about this one, Mike? Trump LaFucks for Kamala Harris. I like it. Walter from Montreal. That's super great integrating your TikToks with your podcast. Love it, Mike. Keep up the great shit. Well, I appreciate that very much. And that wasn't my idea. That was a listener's idea. And I thank them for that idea. Hi, Mike, or hi from Seattle, Mike. I've been happy to follow you since you were putting out short comments on YouTube. Your calm demeanor and measured reports are delightfully reassuring in a stressful time. I value your work as I do with Heather Cox, Dr. Heather Cox Richardson, and Paul Schroeder, both very, very, very good. Hypothetically, if I was the deep state, I would court the deepest pockets of the 1% for decades. I might use Rush Limbaugh and his ilk to push my message. I would then sell my agenda to the subscribers to Elders of Zion, the Club of Rome, the Illuminati, the Skull and Bones elite. Next, I would write propaganda targeting the armed fascist Nazi movement along with the KKK and the uneducated church worshippers. As my ongoing agenda, I would buy up the courts and install a clown to point loudly away from the deep state that my base fears above all else. I would scapegoat my opponents through propaganda by means of projection and attack my opponent with an hourly cluster of bomb of lies until nobody trusted truth. I would support loud-talking legislatures who I can control by holding this truth over their heads like a headsman's axe wielded by my own fear driven by the base. If I was the deep state, I would not be beholden to small money donors. I would not be subjected to established American laws or the legal systems itself. I would not be beholden to an agenda of inclusion or public opinion. I would push my greater gouging of the consumer, high medical bills, and obscene tax breaks for my class. I'm not the deep state. I'm just a guy who's voting Democratic down ballot and the very best qualified presidential candidate I've seen in my lifetime. Maybe there is a maggot or two who might recognize a deep state agenda when they see one, though. Thanks, Keith from Seattle. Well, thank you, Keith. I will say this about all the draconian things you said about these folks. One thing is true: they failed at every fucking turn, and they're going to continue to fail because that's who they are. They're dumb fuck failures. All right, next one comes from Judy from Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Hi, Boomer. Heard on another TikTok creator's video that she read an article in the Rolling Stone that there are currently 71 election deniers in the swing states of AZ, Georgia, Wisconsin, and PA who are going to stop the certification. We talked about this. That's not, they may try to do that. It's not going to work any more than it worked in 2020. Also received a following from you stating, "This is the real rational boomer. I remember you telling your followers to look at the number of followers. Well, I did, and just as my gut feeling told me it wasn't your account, the number of followers was relatively low." Yeah, the imposters on TikTok continue. There's a bunch of them. There could be 5, 10, 15. I don't know. We've tried so hard to get TikTok to do something about it, but they fucking refuse. All I can say is ignore them, block them. Don't report them because, first of all, it doesn't do any good. But I think somehow it comes back to bite me when you do report them. So don't report them, just block them. I'd love to do something about it, but I don't have any power to do it. And TikTok refuses to do it. She finishes up by saying, "Thanks for your awesome reporting. Your podcast are now my go to watch movies. Have a good rest of the week, Judy from Rio Rancho, New Mexico." Well, thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. All right. Trump is saying that he doesn't want people to vote for him because he plans on somehow changing the rules and the laws as to how we count and report the votes. He apparently has people in place in the swing states and other states to assure his electoral victory. Now, Max, I'm going to tell you this. Listen to what you just said in that sentence. Trump is saying that he doesn't want people to vote for him because he plans somehow of changing the rules and laws. Donald Trump never said that. And that isn't even what Donald Trump meant. You have to understand the personality of a narcissist. They will use reverse psychology or try to um, hype themselves up. You know, um, he said that not because he had some plan. Donald Trump's not a smart man. Everybody kept telling me he has a plan, a strategy, 3D chess. We never fucking saw that because he doesn't have a plan. He said that because he wanted people to believe that he's got this in hand, that he's all powerful, and that while you don't need to vote, it doesn't matter because he's got so many votes. It's about self-aggrandizing. It's about self-aggrandizing and showing how powerful he is. What's ironic about him saying you don't need to vote, the night before, he was begging Christians to come out and vote. Vote, it's the last time you'll have to do it. People think he's always got this secret message. It's not a secret message. It's just him fucking flailing. Um, Goes on to say, just because he's saying this in public doesn't mean that he's not going to do this. I plan on communicating to my representatives in the House and Senate my concern. I would like to have the Boomer Brigade do something about it in a similar manner and any other ideas that come up. Thank you, Max. Well, I think that's a good idea. I think it's always a good idea to stay in touch with your representatives and tell them exactly what the fuck you want. Because all too often they do the opposite of what you want. And we're fucking tired of it. All right, last email. Hi, Mike. I happened to be in the car today and heard Trump fielding questions from black journalists at their annual press conference. Oh, wait, I read this one already. This is the second time this email's been on there, so I don't need to read it again. It's from Scott in Redneck County, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Scott, for that. I want to remind you that the regular Rational Boomer podcast is currently running as this one is running. And that one is with Abe. Great show. You want to listen to it. Tomorrow, I have a show already recorded and ready to go just after midnight tomorrow with Christy. Now, Christy's been on the show a number of times. Very bright, very articulate, has a great perspective, and you want to listen to that show. At the time we recorded the show, we didn't know who the vice presidential nominee was, but you'll hear on that show that both Christy and I predicted that it would be Tim Walz. I'm not saying, I'm just saying we're fucking geniuses. No, we weren't. We're just looking at the facts, and that's the feeling we got. So be sure to check out that show tomorrow, too. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me here on the Rational Boomer Podcast Extra. Email VP Extra. I want to thank you for doing that. I hope you have a great day and keep listening to the Rational Boomer Podcast.